ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I have to tell you, many years ago, I was in downtown Los Angeles. There was a Chinese festival, and I had the good pleasure and good fortune of meeting the Feng Shui lady, Angi Ma Wong, a world-renowned pioneer and authority in the fascinating world of Feng Shui. She is a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a wife and mother. She's a Rotarian who actually coined the term intercultural consultant. And she's also a cancer survivor. She's written so many books. Let me name some of them. Feng Shui, Do's and Taboos on financial success. Feng Shui, Do's and Taboos on love. Feng Shui, Do's and Taboos, a guide to what to place where. Fascinating book. She has so many books on well-being. She has a Feng Shui home design kit. Wonderful new books for children. My Story, Reggie, The LA Gator, Who Ate My Socks, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome Angi Ma Wong to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I've rarely met somebody in my life who integrated all the different aspects of life into a business. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? You're doing so many things. Talk about it.
Well, I think I mentioned to you in one of our conversations, I consider myself a missionary, not a religious or a spiritual missionary, but a missionary of knowledge and learning. I learned it from my dad, who loved learning, he loved reading, he loved writing, and I learned all my manners and all those things that make a poised young lady from my mom. My dad was a diplomat, and so we moved in some, I don't want to say rarefied air circles or anything like that, but it was something that I've always been, I grew up in modest circumstances in Wellington, New Zealand, and when I go on my author tours to the schools and speak to young folks, I tell them, I grew up where we barely had a radio, there was no television, no iPods, none of these electronic gadgets and toys that you have. But I got 3 gifts from my parents that I'm forever grateful for, who really influenced me. My parents really influenced who I was. Number 1, they gave me unconditional love and support for everything I did. Number 2, because we didn't have a lot of money at that time, I was not surrounded by toys and gifts and dolls and all those things. But somehow my parents always found the wherewithal to give me gifts. And they were always, for whatever occasion, it was always books and art supplies. And number 3, my mom had a garden, and we had the good fortune of living right up against the parkland in Wellington, up on the hill, and on Marjorie Banks Street. And behind there was the parkland. I grew up climbing trees. I was a real tomboy. My love of nature and love of growing things I inherited from my mom. And so I also was, baptized when I was 8 years old as an Anglican. And yet, when I moved to Taiwan and lived in a 3-generation Chinese, traditional Chinese family, I get a real good dose of nationalism as well as community service from my grandparents. And so you mix that all together, and it basically made me who I am today.
You grew up in Wellington, New Zealand. What a beautiful place.
It was. It was a wonderful place to grow up as a child. It just was.
Was it hard to move from Wellington, New Zealand to Taiwan?
The trip itself, literally, it was an awful trip. It was 21 days by ship. We didn't have, plane travel was not common in those days.
Oh, my God.
And 21 days, the first 3 days I had spent lying in bed, but once I got my sea legs, and that was okay. But I've always had motion sickness. I can't take long plane trips. I can't take bus rides, in winding mountainous roads. We owned a catamaran at one time, and that ended I couldn't even stand there and pull up the sails, what are called the sails. I mean, I'm just a wimp when it comes. I even get car sick following a diesel bus when I'm driving now.
I can see why, though. Maybe the fumes put you under.
The trip itself, was uncomfortable for the first 3 days, but once I got my sea legs, it was fine. And then when I arrived in Taiwan, I was so out of it. I didn't speak Chinese. I spoke only English because it was my first language. The dialect they spoke in Taiwan was Mandarin Chinese. So within my family, with my mom and dad, I spoke English. With my grandparents, my very cursory Cantonese dialect, which is the dialect of my family. But outside the family and even inside with, we had cooks, chauffeurs. I grew up in a privileged household. I had to learn Mandarin, and all my cousins spoke Mandarin. I ended up at the Taipei American School in Taipei because I couldn't speak Chinese, and I would have flunked out of any. I wouldn't even have been accepted in a Chinese language school.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was my adjustment. So I was an outsider, and each time we moved, because my dad was a diplomat, each time we moved, it was a matter of fitting in again and again and again each time.
How many countries did you move to?
Well,
where'd you go?
I moved from, when I was 2 years old, I moved from Hong Kong to New Zealand. That's one. And then from New Zealand to Taipei, Taipei to Washington, to New Jersey, New York, Ridgeville, New Jersey, where I was the first and only Asian student ever when I was in the 8th grade. A year later, my father was transferred down to Washington, D.C. Then I went off to college to Blacksburg, Virginia, to Virginia Tech. And then from there, I got married and moved to L.A. And then in L.A., I've moved about 5 times. So that's about 10 times in my life.
Should I say that you like to travel?
Well, I love to travel, but it's it caused a basic insecurity in my life and sentimentality of holding on things that are precious to me because I never had roots anywhere. That's what happens is that, you're uprooted. So I never had a place that I could call my own until I moved to Los Angeles. And by the way, I was named after the city, so I had a very special affinity to L.A. I just love the city. I love the region. It's very precious to me. It's a treasure of my life. But when it comes time for my ashes to be gone,
yeah.
I want them in New Zealand, I want them in Taiwan, I want them in Washington, D.C., and I want them in L.A.
Wow.
Because emotionally and spiritually, I feel like I'm a part, each one of those places is a part of who I am.
I totally understand. Before my father died, he had asked to have his ashes spread at La Cienega Park, where he used to play a lot of tennis,
right,
on the first hole of Rancho Park.
Oh, yeah.
Golf course.
Golf course, uh-huh.
And at the house.
Yeah.
My sister said, the heck with this. They they ran like, we're not having this. But who did it was me. I walked into Rancho, with a little bag. I didn't want anybody to see what I had or whatever. I'm putting the ashes in my hand. I'm spreading them over the first hole. Meanwhile, I'm running into everybody my father knew in the past.
Right.
And then I did the same thing at the house and the park, etc. And, I think for someone to actually do what you ask them to do is an incredible gift to honor the wishes of the people who have passed.
Yeah, I think that I have a friend who recently lost a child, and her son used to fish up in Alaska. And so when he passed, she took the ashes to Sitka Bay, where he used to fish, and scattered them there. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
So we know now where you want to be scattered at the time that you're no longer in the body.
That is it.
Okay. Will do. Now, you have gone through a lot of challenges in your life.